Hi, I'm Heather. I'm an artist originally from Northern Ireland who now lives in East London. I make art based on my mental health and also personal experiences in life. A lot of them actually recently have been from my dreams and kind of just things that get me through tough periods in my life, and also what I envision for my future, and kind of like a therapeutic thing for me. Kind of remind me that things are going to be okay and that things are always changing, nothing's permanent, and kind of just keeps me going. A lot of these things are based on quite dark things like depression and anxiety and even like trauma responses to things. I like to transmute that energy into something positive so I can kind of look at it and be like, this is how I've dealt with this situation, to say like it's okay not to be okay. We may feel alienated, we may feel like there's no one to talk to about these things, and that's kind of what I use my art for. I'm quite an open person anyway, and I'm quite honest. I'm just kind of brutally honest, to be fair, about my mental health. I'm very passionate about the issues, like social issues, and including mental health. And part of my personal philosophy is that it shouldn't be stigmatized. It's a normal experience, and most people at a certain point in their lives are going to experience it. Statistically, we know it's true. And whether that's through a big life event or a trauma, there's like a really big variety of things that could trigger these responses in people. So I think it is something that, even though we are as a society, I think especially younger generations are more aware of their mental health, and they're aware of kind of all these terms that we've kind of not glorified, but they're just used more often now. Younger generations, so people younger than me, but also my generation, I think, are a lot more likely to take mental health days, reevaluate their living situations, working situations, friendships, parental relationships, sibling relationships, because we as a society are more in tune with our emotions, and we are more aware of the effects of toxic and codependent relationships. So there is a quote that I like about this idea of being broken but being stronger than ever after being repaired. There's a crack in everything. That is how the light gets in. And I think this is something that I always kind of go back to, these ideals of wabi-sabi, which I first discovered and was studying fashion design. But I just love the organic nature of it and the way they embrace change and time and erosion, weathering, natural materials. They challenge the Western ideals of beauty and kind of remind us that it's okay to have a flaw, it's okay to not be perfect and not have everything together all the time. You know, adaptable and flexible to change, and realize who I am today is going to be different than who I am tomorrow, to who I am in 10 years' time, to who I was when I was 14. You know, like, life changes and we change with it, and we go through ups and downs, we go through storms, we go through sunshine, and I think the underlying message is like, everything is beautiful in its own natural form, and everyone has beauty within them. Everyone has both flaws but also things that make them amazing and make them unique and make them who they are. And even aesthetically, I just love the concept of embracing these irregularities and embracing maybe like a little bit like higgledy-piggledy, like natural curves, not really being perfect. I think psychologically but also aesthetically it is kind of refreshing. I think in the modern day and age, a lot of the design and a lot of art and just things we see are like perfectly straight, and like humans aren't designed to be in a perfectly straight and like gridded environment. Like most of the cities, like London included, they're kind of composed of like straight lines and blocks of buildings, and we live in rooms that are little boxes, things that we've learned from the past and also just humanity in general, where we realise that psychologically humans feel better when they are confronted with curves and open spaces, being around trees and things that change with time and show the season. I just love Japanese design, gardens with like water features. I think I just love the merging of nature with design. So it just has a lovely philosophy and meaning behind it that we can reflect on and put into practice in our own lives. Not be so judgmental of ourselves and others, and appreciate the good days and the bad days, and to look for beauty and look for things that remind us of our humanity and remind us of our existence on this planet, and not get so caught up with technology and these boxes that we are put in and also that we live in. So yeah, I just love it. I could probably talk about it all day. We have an exhibition actually coming up, which is very exciting. A group show in West London, a celebration of neurodiversity. So I'm very excited for that. That's something that I had on my to-do list and on my just like New Year's resolutions and like things I wanted to do before I turned 30. So it's kind of given me the opportunity to actually be in that environment and be in an exhibit and seeing kind of what happens, and the kind of meet other artists, meet other people, and just socialize and actually say like, here's my art, here's who I am, this is what it's about, and give me that platform to share with everyone and kind of see what comes of it. If I sell something, or even if someone just kind of is interested in my work and wants to follow my journey, or if they want a commission or they have other ideas for exhibitions, I think it's just like something that I can be able to say like, okay, I've did it, and then go to the next step and go to the next goal of mine, which would be to be selling my art. I think that's something I need to get better with, is actually marketing things, and it's kind of an afterthought. So I think if I actually want to make this a more sustainable practice and to create more art and actually have room to create art, because it's all just sitting in my room, I think I need to be more confident and just put myself out there. And I do have a website, which obviously you can check. And once I actually moved into the house I'm in now, this is whenever I bought like this easel, and I did the first couple of pieces, which I will be showing you. Were based on depression and anxiety and expression and the release of expressing these things that kind of were weighing on me at the time. So I did those, and that was the first time I actually, because I've always kind of painted, I've always drew, I've always did mark making and surface design and played about with these things, photography, editing. This was the first time that I actually named a painting and said, this is my work, this is what it's about, this is the poem, and kind of opened myself up to that critique and being vulnerable. They are quite big. I don't know if it'll actually come into the frame. I think we can just about see that here. So you can kind of see the gloss and the different textures. So whenever I first created these, I wanted to play about with materials and use different ways to kind of get texture and bring more depth to the work. So this one was created with acrylic and also with like texturizing paste. Let me see, actually, I think I have it here. Like all-purpose filler. I feel like I got it from just like a little like pawn shop or something. I wanted something just like cheap to kind of play around with and just see what sort of textures and different effects I could get with it. So yeah, I used this all-purpose filler and also like polyfiller. The first two ones are 24 by 30 inches on canvas. Is called Illuminate. This is like a visual depiction of what depression feels like to me, and the light that pierces through the void is me finding my way out and finding hope towards a brighter and better future. So I do have a little quote that I like. No degree of worldly darkness can extinguish the glow of a soul's inner light. And that is from Wes Fessler. And whenever I posted this first, this is the writing that went alongside it. So it says, the bleak reality is settling in. Your world has turned grey. A weighted fog suffocates your mind. Hazy memories are locked under fortified stone. Distant, unattainable, disconnected. Then nothing. Nothing of note, anyway. A sudden glimpse of light pierces the void. The fog disperses, crawling reluctantly away from this beacon, a sliver of blinding hope, illuminating the way forward. I kind of was imagining when you're in a dark room and it's like pitch black, you can't really see anything. But then a light goes on in the hall and you kind of see this just little crack of light kind of piercing through the darkness, and it's a visual interpretation of depression and kind of finding your way out of feeling that darkness and feeling that infinite void within you and feeling like you can't see and you can't see the way out. But to me it is like quite a personal piece because it was the first one I made, and it's something I like looking at. Even just aesthetically, I like the simplicity and the minimalism of it, but also it does remind me that even on the worst days that there is a way out and there is a way forward. We just have to look for the light. And each of them are just kind of signed on the back with my little makeshift logo, if you can see that. So this is the next one. So Release is a mixed media piece I made as a representation of cathartic release of emotions, sadness and tears that come alongside with periods of depression. Inspired by kintsugi and mending with gold, I included layers of silver to the spiky textures depicting tears, helping reinforce my belief that there is always a silver lining, and that releasing emotions in a healthy way is invaluable for your mental health. I also wrote a written piece to coincide with this work. Can I just disappear for an hour or two, a day, maybe a month? I don't know how to express this, the feeling of sadness but also indifference. Tears fall silently from my eyes without warning. Even trying to decipher how I feel is draining. I just want to switch off, return in a while, sometime when the tears don't form so easily, when my thoughts are simpler, when my breath glides in and out with no restriction, when facing the day and its tasks are easier to digest, when my blues start to dissipate. It's kind of hard to see properly, I think from a distance, but I'll just show you again. So while I was painting this, I was kind of painting very abstractly and also using layers and allowing the paint just to kind of drip down the canvas. You can kind of see a bit more clearly at the bottom there, and also the edge of it has like these textures, like showing the quote-unquote like spikiness of our emotions and feeling just overwhelmed by sadness and overwhelmed by melancholy. But yeah, I wanted to create a depiction of feeling the release and just getting things off your chest and feeling like you have completely emptied yourself of these emotions, and just the cathartic release of tears and release of bottled up emotions to express those things and then move forward with your life. So this is just kind of little bonus ones. So this is just like a little textural study. Again, I just wanted to play about with the materials and play about with what I could create. And I do love, as maybe you can tell, I love a nice, just simple monochromatic colour scheme and the silver and the black. And it's just kind of, I'm very tactile. I think I've always loved being able to touch things, and kind of comes from my textiles background as well. Having art that looks cool but also just feels cool and has like a bit more of like a sculptural element with it. So I created 3 of these. So this is one of them, and I'll show you the rest. You can kind of see up close. So this is another one. This I was using a different technique as well, so a bit of the texture you can kind of see similar to the last one, but I also used like a crackle effect, using layers of PVA and acrylic, and you can kind of just see up close, it's kind of revealed different little aspects. I had a underpainting on this one that I ended up painting over. But yeah, I think it's quite cute. It's quite simple. So this is the last of the little textural experiments. It's just basically the same kind of techniques. This one has a lot more of the metallic paint, which I like. And I kind of just allowed the paint to disperse naturally, go into all the little crevices and textures. I like playing with texture, light, form, and it kind of looks like something geological, maybe like a volcanic stone, or something kind of space, sci-fi, and they're kind of all in the same little colorway. See, like together there's 3 of them, but I'll just show you these 2. These 2 are my favorites. So the next body of work I made is actually a little collection of quite a few of them. So I wanted to create a series of paintings that were using textiles and just kind of inspired by the waves and the currents and natural flow of life. And it kind of also is based off of the wabi-sabi ideals I was kind of talking about. So natural forms, organic lines, and these waves and patterns that we see within nature. So this series is called Undulation. So this one here is called Lenticular, and it is based off of lenticular cloud formations, and the patterns they create are really cool and just really fun to look at. I feel like a lot of my inspiration comes from nature and also through the sky. I love looking at clouds and looking at stars and the sun, the moon. So I got a pleated fabric, and then I adhered it to the canvas. I used different techniques for each of them because it was a new technique I hadn't used before. So I kind of used a mixture of PVA glue on one of them. Another one I used polyfiller, and another one I think I actually used paint itself to adhere them. But you can kind of see, hopefully, that there is some sort of like a 3D texture here. I didn't really control where the fabric went. I just kind of let it fold and let it form its own pattern. And then on top of that I used acrylic paint and also oil pastels. And then I also did little embroideries, so you can kind of see up here a bit better. I did some embroideries onto that as well, just to kind of add an extra layer of texture and some colour. Is sediment. So this was inspired by sediment rock formations. So I saw these images online in, I can't actually think, I think it's Utah, where they have all these red rock formations, and it's just amazing seeing how they are created over millions of years, and they get compacted in different spaces, and they show the history of the area and the capabilities of the materials and the rock there. So similar to lenticular, this one was also created using a pleated fabric, and then it was also embroidered into. So you can kind of see this one's kind of harder to come up on camera for some reason. I think because it's quite monochromatic, which I wanted to do. So yeah, I used a mixture of media on this as well. Some oil pastel, some acrylic, and then some yarn as well. But you can kind of see, hopefully, the different textures and these were inspired by nature, but then also about the ups and downs in life and about adapting and being able to shapeshift and be flexible and change with the season, change with how things go in your life. And these are all like an A4 size roughly. I can put the dimensions up afterwards. And then the third in the undulation series was caustic. So this one is basically, this one changed a few times, so it's kind of hard to even explain how I got here. I wanted to create a thing actually inspired by waves in the sea. At first I was looking at caustics through the water, so looking at kind of like a blue, the light that refracts underwater, and looking at, it was more blue and white. But then I decided I just wanted to create a whole different thing. So the same as the other ones, there is folds and pleats and different, just different forms within here. You can kind of see as I hold it at different angles and the light can reflect, you can see the little embroideries I put on this. This one's a bit crazy at the back. You can see all the embroidery and the inner workings that came into this one. I made these in just at the end of 2023, and they were kind of just experimenting with techniques, experimenting with kind of like sculptural forms on the canvas, and then I changed it to more like a kind of like a sunset, like a very vivid sunset, where the waves are kind of lapping up and the little embroideries are kind of like the sea foam with the white horses on the sea. And I just really love a nice French knot, so I kind of wanted to use that technique on this and just try new things, try something a bit more unconventional in my work, because my first two paintings were a bit more standard, I would say. Again, it is kind of hard to see the detail until you kind of look up close, but then I think that's also quite nice in art, if you have to actually look close to see the details. And the last in the series, Interstellar, it's kind of hard to pick up. So this is like a similar, I had some fabric left over and I had this really small canvas, and I wanted to create something inspired by space and inspired by stars. So this one, if you can see up close, you can kind of see the folds of the fabric. It's kind of all twirled and bunched together, kind of like tie-dye. Kind of gives you the impression like you're kind of hurtling through space and kind of going through an interstellar journey. And I did like the metallic with the black. It's quite simple. The way it kind of reflects the light at different angles, I just think it's quite fun. It can also be a representation of our personal journeys and perhaps things moving at a speed that we can't really keep up with, movement, progression, and self-improvement. So my next one is kind of inspired by a combination of the last paintings I showed you, because this one is clearly inspired by space and astrology and really imagination. So you can see in my previous work it was all quite dark. A lot of it was very dark, either monochromatic or using just like darker color schemes and a bit more moody, I would say. Whereas this one, I wanted to kind of push myself to access my childlike qualities and go back to how I felt as a child, exploring my creativity and having a inner world. So this one is called Inner Space, and as opposed to outer space, it is meant to represent my world within myself and how I view creativity, how I view the source of inspiration within myself. And I just wanted to have fun and be able to experiment and play with colours and play with textures and different motifs like rainbows, embroidery, and really just have fun. So yeah, this one, if you see up close, you can see this is all embroidered, and then also little planets embroidered. You can see this one, French knots again, and an eclipse, an upside down rainbow. I think I kind of worked through a few variations of this painting as I kind of played about with composition and played about with, I did have originally a rainbow up here, which you can still see, so I liked that. I liked having it kind of just barely there, like a little underpainting, because I wanted this to kind of represent a surreal kind of landscape and something that doesn't really make sense, and it's not really meant to make sense because it's all very childlike, very based in a realm of imagination and play and colour. It kind of reminds me to not be so in my head and not be so restrictive with my creativity, and to try new things, to embrace the creative journey and my inspiration. I used water-based oil paint, I used some colouring pencil, I used some acrylic, and I used some coloured yarn as well to create this. So there are a few more that I made, but they're all at my mum's house back in Northern Ireland. So last year I was kind of feeling I was having a hard time mentally. I had lost my job last January. Things just were very up in the air and very stressful at this time. So I did go to my mum just to see my family and my friends and catch up and get a bit of respite from London. But yeah, so I created a piece called Tectonic Shift. So this combined my usage of clay and sculptural techniques to the form of a circular canvas. This was inspired by the constant change and movements in our lives, the ups and downs and the shifting we feel as we navigate through different issues and emotional situations. At this time in my life, I was struggling with my sense of autonomy, being in a toxic relationship and wanting to be able to express myself freely without constraints. The natural material of the clay lended itself well to this meaning, as cracks naturally formed, showing how differences in tension and movement can create friction and separation in our emotional states. I felt like I was on a tectonic plate, moving to a new stage of my life, and emotionally cracked open by the stresses and changes that were occurring, things I was unable to control. I wanted to create these pieces to kind of show the transition between where I used to be and where I was going towards, feeling like things were changing. I think I just told myself, like, okay, you're going to create something and you're going to make the most of this time. So I was able to do 3 things while I was there, which isn't very common for me. I was also constrained with my materials because the 3 pieces I made while I was at home were all made with old canvases. Probably I think the clay was from lockdown, so it was sitting there for 4 years. So the clay was 4 years old. A lot of the canvases were things that I painted maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I kind of just went with it and intuitively was able to create these things while I was there. So Tectonic Shift was the first one I made while I was there, and then I made Burning Eclipse. So this was another exploration into the cycle of life and circular forms. I use this motif of an eclipse as a motif of change and discovery and rebirth, and it kind of represents like a portal, a baptism by fire and shift in energy to burn the past energy and move towards a fresh start in life. And I remember at the time people actually really liked this one, and it's just quite funny because a lot of the work I've shown you so far, they took months, they took ages to make. And I think it's almost more scary because you take so long to create them that by the time you actually post them, if you don't get a good reception, you kind of feel very just upset and underwhelmed, and you kind of get in your head and you wonder did I waste those months? Did I, all that time I worried about it and put the work in and made these things and kind of second guessed myself and put the post out, because I don't know about you, but whenever I post things on Instagram and on social media, I always get a rush of anxiety and dread. So that's why whenever I posted these new ones that were just quick, done it in a week, there was less to worry about because I knew it was quick and I knew it was kind of off the cuff and just little experiments, and they got a good reception. Because the thing is with art, you can always edit, you can always destroy, undo, repaint, you can rework things, which is what I did with those ones, and used old materials. It was nothing crazy, it was nothing very expensive or time consuming, but the feelings and emotions I had behind those I think were very significant to me at that time, and perhaps that's why people liked them, or they just liked them aesthetically. But yeah, it was it was good just to get those things off my chest. I also did a little commission for my sister, which I'll put an image up. So this was for her wedding bouquet. She wanted me to create something for her. I created a little oil pastel because I didn't have the paint to actually paint what I wanted to for her, so I ended up kind of going outside my comfort zone again to just do a little oil pastel canvas for her wedding. It's kind of hard to see, but this one was created over the course of quite a few months, and then I wasn't really sure what I was actually doing until I was creating it, and I just went with my gut instincts and my intuition. So I was able to paint this motif of a full moon, a crescent moon. This piece is called Guiding Light. By the time I actually finished this painting, I was in a new job, I was newly single, and at the time I kind of felt like I was having a rebirth, that new things were possible. I was trying new techniques, something that I'd never really tried before, and pushing myself out of my comfort zone to not be in the constraints of a box, but to use textiles and use threads and something that I can touch, something that can move. It is all acrylic paint on a recycled wool background, and then painted acrylic yarn as well on top. And I wanted to create like a gradient effect and kind of mimic the aura. It kind of represents that feeling of like looking up at the sky and setting your intentions for a new period in your life, a new moon, and having that light as a beacon of hope and guidance through the next stages in your life. Just kind of show more up close what it kind of looks like. The one thing is, it's kind of, sometimes these don't line up the way I intend because of the nature of it, but I think that's also part of it, of the irregularity and the nature of fabric and of how it flows. I do love how it moves and changes with the light. So yeah, this is Guiding Light, and then I will show you the next one as well. And then this is the first one I made. This is New Moon. So it's basically the same kind of concept of a feeling of new beginnings, new starts. And as I started from a feeling of feeling constricted and feeling confused, by the time I actually painted this, I was more aware of where I wanted to be and also of who I was, and certain of my future and of my aspirations and hopes and dreams for myself, and really just valued my time alone and time to heal. I think this one kind of represents that period of healing and period of self-discovery, inspiration, and feeling like the possibilities are endless. You kind of see as well, just to show you the back, you can see where I kind of like stitched in the materials, and then you can also see where there was like little holes and like little imperfections in the fabric itself, which I actually really liked. And you can see it was like from a little dress, like a skirt, so you can kind of see the pleating and the sewing that came into that, and my little signature. So this was made in August of last year, and I kind of kept these strings kind of just irregular and let them cascade just the way they wanted to. And again, there's like a gradient effect, and the dark to light. I love contrasting elements and hard and soft, dark and light, positive, negative, yin and yang, that sort of ideology of contrasting elements and also opposing forces. And I think a lot of our lives are kind of composed of these opposing forces. Nothing's perfect in this life, and it's never going to be completely easy, especially if you're kind of holding high hopes and expectations for yourself. I think we will always have these push and pull kind of elements in our life. It's not perfectly symmetrical, it's not perfectly painted, it's all kind of freestyle, and the way our lives are as well, ups and downs and little flaws, they work together as a period of time, a different cycle. Like this is a new moon, it's only just kind of emerging, and then it kind of transforms into this full moon and full kind of awakening and rebirth. So I only really have one more to show. I do have some works in progress at the moment that have kind of been on the back burner because I was going through a period of depression, and I went home to Northern Ireland for a full month. So I didn't create anything. I gave myself that space to kind of recover and replenish myself, and I had to take time off work. And it's all kind of tied into this piece. So I am excited to do new work. A lot of it is inspired off this period of my life and what this painting represents for me. So this is Tears in Heaven. So this one I actually painted, I think it was on, let's say 2 or 3 days before my granny's birthday. And at the time I was actually thinking about heaven, and I was thinking about afterlife, and whenever I think about these things I always kind of think of her, because she is, well, she was turning 92 that week, and I used to live with her and cared for her, and she's just like a big part of my life, and like she helped me as I grew up. I used to stay with her. She was kind of like a parental, motherly figure to me. Yeah, Tears in Heaven kind of just intuitively came to me, so I kind of created this thinking about a river flowing out of heaven, and it kind of was just like an image and an idea that kind of came to me. And then it just so happened that later that week I actually went to a Maverick Sabre album preview, and he had all these songs about grief and about love and about mourning, and I remember I was listening to them and I was thinking about my granny, and I was getting emotional just thinking about like what would I do if she wasn't well. And then the next day it was her birthday, and I was waiting for my mum and my family to phone me to tell me how she was, because they were all going to go and they were going to have like a cake and everything. I was working as a dementia support worker, and on the way home on the tube my mum phoned me and told me that she wasn't doing well. I had to rush home Saturday, and then by the Tuesday she sadly passed away. And it was just kind of crazy that I painted this before I even knew. It's almost like my intuition was telling me that something was wrong before I even knew. And my granny always loved the colour purple, and I love the colour purple. So it was already kind of completely formed. The only thing that I hadn't added in was these little lines kind of showing a waterfall. But yeah, my granny was a very religious woman. She always talked about God and heaven and being ready. And before the dementia, saying she had a long life, she had obviously a faith and a trust in God to do what was best for her. And sadly, in the last few years of her life, she was overtook by dementia, and she couldn't speak, and she didn't seem happy. So for a while leading up to me actually painting this, I was kind of praying for her and praying for her comfort, and if anything was to happen, that she wouldn't be in too much pain and she would be able to just pass over peacefully. So that's kind of what this depicts. Even though there is peace in knowing that she's no longer in pain and that things have worked out as God intended and planned, it didn't kind of take away the pain, and it didn't take away the shock and the grief that did happen, even though she was 92 and even though she herself was ready years before to go to heaven. It was more so my interpretation of my grief at that time and feeling of that she herself, even in heaven, would be sad for us being sad, if that makes any sense. I think it's a very human emotion, and I mean, we don't really know what heaven is like, but I feel like they would have an empathy and an understanding for that human emotion of loss and shock and grief and mourning. So yeah, it's kind of hard to see with the glare, but you can see this was using water-based oil, and then I just put a little gloss varnishing on it. But yeah, I just wanted to share some of my work and what kind of inspired it, and the things that bring me joy, inspiration, strength, healing, and give me that space to kind of reflect and be conscious and intentional with my actions and with my creations. I do hope that I can help even just one person and encourage people to find what makes them happy and what their calling is, what their purpose is. Life is hard, and we kind of have the responsibility to ourselves to make it that bit easier and be easier on ourselves and just spread joy and spread positivity where we go. And that's what I hope to do through my art and through this page. Now that I've created this, I kind of want to create a safe space for people to connect with each other and also reflect on things and learn new things perhaps, or try new things. I would like to do little maybe like tutorials of like how I work through ideas, or how I can use painting as a form of therapy and things like that. I'm not really sure where I'm going to go with this, because I have so many ideas, as I've already said. Even things like healing music. I did try to make some when I was in lockdown, and that's something that I might revisit. I think this is the space where I'm just going to play and hopefully make a difference in whatever way I can. So yeah, if any of this has uplifted you or inspired you or encouraged you, or you've kind of resonated with anything I've said, I would encourage you all to like my video, subscribe, and kind of follow this journey as I figure things out. I would love to foster a community of like-minded people and people who are from all walks of life, a diverse community of people who value mental health and value creativity, value art, value comedy, value social issues and equality, and and yeah, to have fun while we're doing it. So yeah, thank you for listening to my rambling, my TED Talk, my lecture. It must have been like 3 or 4 hours at this point, so I'm kind of done. I think my body is sore, my throat is dry, so I think that's the sign to call it a day.